In this video, I want to talk about how you can install Teletext onto a Raspberry Pi so that you can preview it on a TV the same way as you would have done back in the days when it was being broadcast. The reason I'm doing a follow-up video for this, you've probably seen online videos on how to do this before, but I'm doing a follow-up because Raspberry Pi software changes and VBit 2 changes, and basically there are lots of things that change over time which makes those videos go out of date. So I'm going to try and do an up-to-date version, and we'll see how long it stays up to date for. So what do you need? Well, first of all, obviously you need a Raspberry Pi, and there are lots of options for Raspberry Pis. For example, probably still the best option to get started off with for ease of everything is just an original 1B. If you have one of these, it will still run Teletext very well, and you can still use it on any TV that's around. Now you can see mine is quite an old one, so it's missing a capacitor, and I've had to change the SD card slot and things, but this is still perfectly capable of doing Teletext. And all you need then is an SD card. You've got Ethernet built in. Problem is you don't have Wi-Fi, but you have a proper video connector as well, and that's something that, well, no other Pi has that. All the other Pis you're going to need a converter lead. As far as cost goes, your best option is the Pi Zero because it is by far the cheapest, and it has built-in Wi-Fi, and it has a proper analog output. But the only problem is, as you can see, the video output is on a header pin, so you'll need to be able to solder a connector onto that if you want to use a Pi Zero, but that will work. And of course all the other Pis except the Pi 5. The Pi 5 won't work, but every other sort of Pi will work, and they generally speaking have Wi-Fi and Ethernet both built in, so it's sort of the best of both worlds here. But the problem is your analog output, which you need, is on a 4-pin connector. And I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because one of the problems you'll have is obviously you need a converter cable that takes a 4-pole 3.5mm and gives you a standard phono output or something. And you would think that would be really easy, but the problem is it's one of these things where there are so many competing pinouts for these that it's not at all straightforward. So what they've done is on the top pin you have your left audio, on the second pin down you have your right audio, and then you get to these two here. Now you would sort of think, wouldn't you, that it would make sense to use this one as ground, and this one would then be your video output, and that would mean if you were using just a standard 3-pole connector, that these two would be shorted together and you wouldn't get any video hum on your audio because it would be grounded and everything would work. But no, for some reason we have video on the innermost pin and this one is ground, and that is a stupid Apple thing, but we will not go into all that. Basically, this is the pinout that you need, and the problem is because camcorders and things also use this connector, but they use different pinout. Even though a cable looks like it should work, it may not necessarily. So what I've done is I've put a link down in the description of a connector that I know works, because even ones that are labeled as being Pi compatible, you might find that they are actually, well, take this cable for example. This is compatible, but it doesn't work the way you would expect, because normally you would expect your video signal to come out on the yellow pin, wouldn't you? So let's find out. If I put my probe in there and connect it to the innermost pin here, oh, there's no connection. And that's because on this cable, the video comes out on the red pin. So yeah, that's the sort of thing you need to watch out for. So if you're buying stuff just for this, I would recommend go to the link in the description from RS for a cable that will definitely work with this. Next thing, you need either a micro SD card for the newer Pis and the Pi Zero, or if you still are using one of these, which I can't imagine many people are, you need an adapter or a proper SD card. And lastly, you need a reader so that you can plug the SD card into your computer. And And if you're just leaving your Pi lying around on the bench, might be a good idea to get a case. This case doesn't fit any of these, but no matter, we'll ignore that. This is a case that comes with the thing. And the other thing is, if you're literally buying brand new for doing this, why not just make life easy for yourself and get a starter kit? Because that contains your plug, it contains the Pi, it contains an SD card, and it contains a case. So go online and you'll see these for sensible money. There's no need to go for the latest and greatest Raspberry Pi for this, because frankly it makes absolutely no difference, and in fact, as I've said, a Pi 5 won't work. So let's go across to the computer and install this and get it working. So over at the computer here, the first thing we need to do is go ahead and do a search for Raspberry Pi Imager, and you'll see probably the top result will be something like this, Raspberry Pi OS, and we can go ahead and download for Windows, and within a couple of seconds we have the Imager, and yes, we want to install it. Let's go ahead and click out of that, install, and it should only take a few minutes, and here we go. So at this point I am going to get out my micro SD card for the computer, and I apologize for the low effort screen capture method we've got going on today. And I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my computer. There we go. So now, first thing, need to select what Pi we're using. Doesn't really matter, to be completely honest, but you'll see why in a second. But anyway, let's select. What am I going to use? I'm going to use the 3B that I have here. So let's scroll on down and find Raspberry Pi 3. Choose OS. Now this is where things get a bit more interesting. You'll see here I actually have it already, but for sake of completeness, if you're installing from new, what you'll probably need to do is go to Raspberry Pi OS Other, and what you're looking for is the 32-bit Lite Legacy version. So Raspberry Pi OS Legacy 32-bit Lite. That'll do us. We'll select that, choose storage, and there is the SD card that I've selected. Now this is pretty good about only selecting the proper SD card, but just to be sure we don't have anything else that's likely to be wiped. No, we don't. So we'll select that. Next. Now this is where things get a bit interesting. This is where we can set the password and Wi-Fi on the Pi before we even have to log in. Now I like to do this because it means that I don't need to ever connect a keyboard and mouse up to the Raspberry Pi. I can do everything from the computer. So let's go ahead and edit settings, and you'll see I've already set a password for me and a user and password for the Raspberry Pi, and I've also put in the right password and name for my Wi-Fi, and that automatically populates from your computer if it's connected to Wi-Fi. Mine's not, but anyway, we'll ignore that. So we can go ahead and also make sure to enable SSH, use password authentication, or if you're very clever you can set up public key authentication, but for this kind of thing I don't think it really matters. Options, yeah, that's all good enough. Just hit yes. Any existing data on that SD card will be erased. Yep, we don't care about that, so let's go ahead and do that. And this is where we go and make a cup of tea and wait for this to work. And I have a funny feeling that the SD card I'm demonstrating on is broken, so it'll be interesting to see if this works. But we'll be back in just a few seconds. While we're waiting for this to verify, it's nearly finished writing, but while we're waiting, let's talk about how you set it up on your actual TV. So this is the TV I'm going to be using, and it's a fairly early, shall we say, LCD TV with Freeview built in. The important thing to note is most modern TVs will actually still work with Teletext. The only thing you need to check for is that it has an analog input, and that's what I'm plugged into there. So if it has that, you're probably good to go. So let's just go ahead and source, and we want video. Now on your TV, obviously it's going to be a different name from this, but that should do it. And obviously the Pi's not switched on at the moment, so yeah. Now, I have down on my really messy desk here, I have my Pi 3 set up. I've got my dodgy connector with the wrong colour connected. And, oh, just as we speak, there's the SD card has finished writing. And I see my phone is hunting for focus, so I apologise, but I never said this was going to be high effort, did I? Now, sorry, you're seeing too much there. So here is the SD card. And we're just going to go ahead and stick that in the Pi, which I can't do with one hand. So, one moment, please. Okay, so the SD card is in the Pi, the power is connected, the video is connected, and lo and behold, the TV has come to life, and we are apparently generating SSH keys. So, okay, we'll wait for that. Rebooting in 5 seconds, and I wish this would stop hunting for focus. I'm going to switch this other monitor off. There we go. And that looks like a valid boot screen to me. So hopefully whenever this boots up, let's see what happens. That's not good. Why have we gone blank? Is that normal? I don't know. You're seeing this at the same time as me. I'm expecting this to come back to life shortly. Is it going to come back to life shortly? Anyway, in the meantime, let's fire up an SSH shell. So what you need for this is, I think you can do this directly on Windows now, but I always still use PuTTY. So if you Google that there, PuTTY with the capital TTY, and then just do raspberrypi.local, and I haven't spelt that right, there we go. And I can go ahead and hit enter, and that looks like that's just rebooted. I should probably point out at this point that I'm not using a proper plug. I have this hot wired into my bench power supply, so that may be a problem. Let's give it a second. Alright, do you know what? Let's go ahead and get a proper plug. 2 seconds. Okay, so I changed the plug and we've still got a blank screen, but it is staying up now. So let's try PuTTY again. Oh, sorry, that's my router. Let's not show that. PuTTY and Raspberry Pi dot local. Actually, in a lot of cases, that should be 2 hours. In a lot of cases, you don't need the .local bit, but we'll use it here for completeness. There's a security alert, look, but we can just say yes. And the login, in my case, this is what you set earlier on when we were doing the customization settings. This is this. So in my case, that's going to be Nathan, and the password is going to be my password. And that looks good. And let me just make sure that this is definitely the right one. And yeah, that looks about right. So that means we should be good to go. So next what we're going to do is fire up Google again, and let's not show that, and go to GitHub, and what we're looking for is vbit2. So you could copy that address, but you know what? What's easier is just Google vbit2, and I don't think there's many of those around. So yeah, top result. And we get this page here, which is lots of code and scary stuff, but we don't need any of that. All we need is to go to the wiki, and if you scroll on down, you'll see there's a nice block of text that we can copy and paste. So if I just copy that, and bear in mind I'm using my wrong hand for this because I'm holding the camera with the right, and that does something, and then we can just copy this, and this should do something else. Now that looked like it hit return there, but I think that was just a new line character, so I'm going to hit return again. And now we're going to wait for some stuff to install and see what happens. So let's wait for this to finish, 2 seconds. I just wanted to jump in here and say this that you're seeing right now, this is it actually compiling VBit2. Now on the 3B Plus that I'm using, this should only take a minute or so. But if you're using the old B or the 0, you're probably going to be waiting a good 10-15 minutes for this to work. So this is another opportunity to go and, get a cup of tea and, stick the telly on for a few minutes or, whatever, and come back when this is done. So let's just give this another couple of minutes. Okay, so weirdly, we still have a blank screen on our TV at the moment, but anyway, in the meantime, this dialogue has appeared. So what we want to do now is actually select what teletext service we want to watch and get it set up. So again, if my phone would quit hunting for focus, we can use the keyboard arrow keys and the return key to select things. So if I do select server or install service, sorry, and we have lots of options here. So let's go with chunky text to begin with. And we get installing, please wait. And now we have some new options. We have start VBit2 and various other things. But let's just go ahead and start VBit2 and see what happens. Now, I'm still a bit weirded out that my TV is sitting completely blank. I mean, we do have a video signal, but it's not the right one. So yeah, text is currently unavailable. Okay, so that's pretty weird. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and hit exit, and then I'm gonna type in sudo reboot, and our thing disconnects, and I've seen a brief flicker on my TV there, so let's just see what happens. Okay, no signal. That's booting up again. It looks bigger than it used to as well. Let's just see if I hit info. Ah yes, that's what we want to see. That's PAL. Teletext will only work with PAL video. Oh, and there's the little... Did you see the lightning strike symbol in the top corner? Basically that's saying your power supply is rubbish and you should get a new one. But the fact that it's went out again means that this should probably work. So if I just right click up here and do restart session, and then I can type in, again, apologies, I'm doing this with my wrong hand so that I can hold you. Oh, have I typed something in wrong, or is this... No, there we go, there we go. So what we can do now, as far as I remember, we should just be able to do vbit-config. Config. Yes, and now we're back to our thing again. So I'm going to try that again. I'm going to do start VBit2, and oh, you missed that. So I'm just going to stop it again just so that you can see what happens on your TV. So if I go back down to start and we look up at the TV, see it jumps by a couple of lines? So what this is actually doing is the Pi can write video to a square on your screen, right? So what this code does is it shifts that up by a couple of lines so it can write in the vertical blanking interval where teletext lives. So now if I hit text, okay, there's something just not quite 100% right there, but it is working. I want to make sure this starts on boot from now on, so I've hit options, and now we have options to automatically update the service. So yeah, let's do that, but you select these with the space bar. So if I do space, that's putting that little asterisk in there. We want it to run on boot. Enable teletext packet server. Now I don't know what that is, so we'll not do that. Select service. Oh, sorry. Let's go ahead and start again. The other thing is, of course, it could be that this TV is rubbish.